Democracy depends on a free press. Please support our independent journalism at democracynow.org/give. Welcome to Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, the War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman. Officials in Gaza say Israeli strikes have killed over 100 people in the past day, the majority of them children and women, as Palestinians grow increasingly desperate in their daily struggle for survival more than 10 weeks after Israel cut off all imports of humanitarian aid, including food and medicine. Thousands were seen fleeing Gaza City after the Israeli military once again issued forced relocation orders, among them sick and wounded patients at Al-Shifa Hospital who were left to fend for themselves in Gaza's streets.
My daughter was admitted to the hospital as a result of the siege, starvation, and malnutrition. We do not know where to go with the patients. We are fleeing from one death to another. We are dying slowly. Everything we have is over. We are dying 1,000 times every day. Until when will this let down? Until when is this siege? Until when is this weakness in our nation?
Israel's brutal assault on Gaza continued as Palestinians commemorated the 77th anniversary of Nakba, which is Arabic for catastrophe, when some 700,000 Palestinians fled from or were violently expelled from their homes by Israel's founders. This is a Palestinian resident of Ramallah who joined Nakba Day marches in the occupied West Bank.
Despite all of the circumstances, we are maintaining our land and rooted here. Our right of return will never be forgotten, and Palestine will always be Palestine.
Human Rights Watch is condemning Israel's plan to demolish Gaza's remaining civilian infrastructure while concentrating the Palestinian population into a tiny area. HRW said such actions would, quote, amount to an abhorrent escalation of Israel's ongoing crimes against humanity, ethnic cleansing, and acts of genocide, unquote. Adding, quote, Israel's blockade has transcended military tactics to become a tool of extermination, unquote. On Wednesday, activists with Taxpayers Against Genocide delivered a complaint to the Inter-American Commission on Human Rights in Washington, D.C., calling on the U.S. to follow its obligations to prevent genocide under the American Declaration on the Rights and Duties of Man. Huwaida Araf is lead attorney in the case.
Because when you support genocide, you basically violate every right that's guaranteed in the American Declaration, which the United States is held to. The first and foremost among them is the right to life.
President Donald Trump again called for the U.S. to take over Gaza and turn it into what he called a freedom zone. He made the comments earlier today from Qatar as he continues his tour of the Gulf states. On Wednesday, Sheikh Tamim Al Thani welcomed Trump for an official state visit with a lavish ceremony. During his visit, Trump announced Qatar had agreed to deals with U.S. companies worth close to $250 million, including worth over $240 billion, including a $96 billion deal for Boeing to sell hundreds of jets to Qatar.
From Boeing, that's the largest order of jets in the history of Boeing. That's pretty good. So that's a record, Kelly. And congratulations to Boeing. Get those planes out there.
The White House says Trump still plans to accept the $400 million luxury jet from Qatar known as the Flying Palace to replace Air Force One temporarily, despite bipartisan criticism, including from Senate Majority Leader John Thune and other top Republicans. NBC News reports the cost of converting the plane could take several years at a cost of over $1 billion. Trump is traveling to the United Arab Emirates today for the final leg of his Middle East tour. In Virginia, Georgetown University scholar Badr Khansuri has united with his family following his release on bail from a Texas ICE jail after a federal judge Wednesday ruled his detention violated his rights to free speech and due process. Khansuri's release comes 1 week after Tufts scholar Ramesa Ozturk was freed from a Louisiana ICE jail and 2 weeks after Columbia University student Mohsen Madawi was released from ICE custody in Vermont. Federal agents abducted Khansuri outside his home in Virginia in March, separating him from his 3 children and his wife, a U.S. citizen of Palestinian descent. Khansuri is a peace scholar. He recently wrote from behind bars that he'll, quote, leave no avenue unexplored in defying the witch hunt unleashed upon me and others who believe in freedom for Palestinians, he said. The U.S. Supreme Court's hearing arguments today on a case stemming from Trump's plan to end birthright citizenship. The Trump administration's challenging the power of federal courts to rule against Trump's executive order and to impose nationwide injunctions. In other news from D.C., Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem told House lawmakers she backed the idea of suspending habeas corpus to carry out the Trump administration's mass deportation agenda. At the hearing, California Democratic Congressmember Eric Swalwell blasted Noem for refusing to disavow President Trump's use of a photoshopped image of a tattooed hand, which Trump claimed as proof the expelled Maryland father, Kilmar Abrego Garcia, was an MS-13 gang member. This is part of their exchange.
You are one of the chief law enforcement officials in the country. What have you done to investigate whether the president misrepresented the reason that that person has been detained?
Sir,
have you done anything to try and figure out whether that was doctored or not?
The mission of the Department of Homeland Security is to secure our nation and to make sure that we're out there going after those that are the worst of the worst, the criminals, the bad actors. Abrego Garcia.
So the answer is you've done nothing to correct the president.
In related news, National Intelligence Director Tulsi Gabbard has fired 2 senior officials who oversaw the National Intelligence Council's report contradicting Trump's rationale for invoking the Alien Enemies Act to expel alleged members of the Venezuelan gang Tren de Aragua without due process. In other immigration news, the Trump administration said it's charging Harvard scientist Ksenia Petrova with smuggling for failing to declare frog samples while she was traveling. Petrova was detained in February and transferred to an ICE jail in Louisiana. She faces political persecution if deported back to her home country of Russia over her protests against the Russian invasion of Ukraine. Petrova is a highly skilled scientist whose work could lead to major advances in early cancer detection. A Russian delegation has arrived in Turkey for the first direct peace talks with Ukraine in over 3 years, but the delegation does not include Russia's President Vladimir Putin nor its Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov. Instead, several of Putin's deputies are attending. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky called Russia's president's presence decorative as he arrived in Ankara today. Zelensky had challenged Putin to negotiate a face-to-face peace deal. Shortly after Russia's announcement, the White House said President Donald Trump would also skip the peace talks. On Wednesday, officials in Ukraine's northeastern city of Sumy said a Russian missile attack on an industrial site killed at least 3 civilians. The German charity Sea-Watch reports 2 children, aged 3 and 4, died after a rubber dinghy carrying refugees from Libya to Italy broke down and was stranded in the Mediterranean. The children died of dehydration. 1 other person drowned in the journey. Another 59 passengers survived. In Libya, rival militias traded fire Wednesday in the capital Tripoli just hours after a truce had been called following the worst fighting in the area for years. The clashes broke out Monday following the killing of the leader of a powerful armed group that's been accused of major human rights abuses in Libya's migrant detention facilities. At least 6 people were killed. Libya is ruled by 2 main authorities while armed groups vie for control over Libya's natural resources. A UN-recognized government in Tripoli is led by Prime Minister Abdelhamid Dibba, while a rival administration in the east of the country is controlled by Khalifa Haftar and his Libyan National Army. Here in New York, the federal sex trafficking and racketeering trial for 90s hip-hop star business mogul Shawn Diddy Combs is underway. On Wednesday, his ex-partner, Cassie Ventura, detailed Diddy's intense physical and sexual abuse during their relationship, including how he forced her to participate in hundreds of drug-fueled sex parties he called freak-offs. Ventura also told the court Diddy raped her after their relationship ended. Jurors were shown a video of Diddy beating and began kicking Ventura, dragging her on the floor of a Los Angeles hotel outside an elevator in 2016. Shawn Diddy Combs is accused by multiple women of sexual assault, trafficking, and exploitation over decades. He was arrested in September. If convicted, he faces a possible life sentence. Congressional Democrats grilled Health and Human Services Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. in back-to-back hearings in the House and Senate Wednesday. Kennedy defended major cuts to HHS as part of the Trump administration's efforts to dismantle federal agencies, insisting key programs would still operate without offering any concrete plans. He was also questioned about his response to the growing U.S. measles outbreak and his vaccine skepticism. This is an exchange with Congressmember Mark Pocan.
If you had a child today, would you vaccinate that child for measles?
For measles, probably for measles. You know, what I would say is my opinions about vaccines are irrelevant. I have directed Jay Bhattacharya.
Sure. No, like I said, I don't want to.
So that everybody can make that decision. But I don't want to seem like I'm being evasive.
Yeah.
But I don't think people should be taking advice, medical advice from me.
Peace activists disrupted Kennedy's Senate hearing, leading to their forced removal and the arrest of 7 protesters, among them Ben & Jerry's co-founder Ben Cohen.
Congress kills poor kids in Gaza by buying bombs and pays for it by kicking kids off Medicaid in the U.S.
RFK Jr. is ordering the FDA to review regulations around the highly prescribed abortion pill, mifepristone, citing a new study that experts have called fatally flawed and junk science. The ACLU said Kennedy's trying to, quote, make it harder for people to get medication abortions based on propaganda pushed out by a Project 2025 sponsor, unquote, while leaving the final decision on the matter to Trump. The ACLU added, quote, we should all be scared if our access to safe FDA-approved medications turns on President Trump's gut instinct rather than credible scientific evidence, unquote. In another blow for abortion rights, South Carolina's Supreme Court has upheld the state's 6-week abortion ban, which outlaws nearly all abortions. And House Republicans have successfully pushed through proposals that would slash Medicaid and food stamps as part of Trump's budget, making his 2017 tax cuts for the wealthiest Americans permanent by taking away essential services for the rest of the country. The measure could leave more than 8.6 million people without health care over the next decade. Some Senate Republicans have voiced concerns over the bill, namely that it doesn't include steep enough spending cuts. And those are some of the headlines. This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman.
And I'm Nermeen Sheikh. Welcome to our listeners and viewers across the country and around the world.
Democracy Now! Is funded by viewers like you. Please give today at democracynow.org/give.